Iceland is a land shaped by extremes. Fire rises from deep within the earth, while ice covers the surface in silence. Volcanoes erupt without warning, and glaciers slowly erase everything in their path. For centuries, this island stood far from the centers of power, isolated by cold oceans and harsh weather. Most people never expected Iceland to survive, let alone succeed. It had no armies, no empire, and no great wealth. And yet, this quiet island would one day achieve independence in a way unlike most nations, without violence, without war, and without chaos. In the 9th century, Norse settlers arrived on Iceland's empty shores. These were not invaders looking to conquer land. They were families escaping kings, heavy taxes, and strict rule in Scandinavia. Iceland offered freedom, but it also demanded strength and endurance. Life was difficult from the beginning. The land was unforgiving, the climate harsh, and survival uncertain. But one thing made Iceland different from other societies of its time: there was no king. People lived without a ruler and made decisions together. In the year 930, Iceland created something remarkable. It formed the Alþingi, one of the oldest parliaments in the world. People gathered in the open air to discuss laws, settle disputes, and make collective decisions. There were no palaces or thrones. Laws were spoken aloud so everyone could hear them. Power was shared, not inherited. For a brief period in history, Iceland showed that society could function without absolute rulers. Over time, internal conflicts weakened Icelandic society. Trade with Europe became necessary for survival, and dependence slowly replaced independence. Protection from stronger kingdoms seemed like the only option. First, Norway took control of Iceland. Later, Denmark inherited it. Decisions about Iceland were now made far away, by people who rarely understood its struggles. The Alþingi lost authority, and Iceland's political voice slowly faded. Life under Danish rule was harsh. Famine struck repeatedly. Diseases spread easily in small communities. Volcanic eruptions destroyed farms, and long winters pushed people to the edge of survival. Denmark controlled trade, keeping Iceland economically dependent. There were no major uprisings, not because people were satisfied, but because daily survival left little room for rebellion. This period was not about resistance, it was about endurance. While military resistance was impossible, Icelanders protected something even more powerful: their identity. They preserved their language, copied ancient sagas, and passed down history through writing and storytelling. Poets, scholars, and writers became the guardians of the nation. Culture kept Iceland alive when political power was gone. While empires ruled the land, Icelandic identity survived in words and memory. In the 19th century, new ideas reached Iceland from Europe. People began to question absolute power and demand rights, representation, and national identity. The Alþingi was restored as an advisory body, and political awareness slowly grew. Icelanders observed the violent revolutions elsewhere and learned an important lesson: small nations do not survive chaos. They survive through patience and negotiation. In 1874, Denmark granted Iceland its first constitution. It was limited, but meaningful. For the first time in centuries, Iceland gained a degree of self-rule. In 1904, home rule followed. Icelanders now controlled their internal affairs. Independence was still distant, but progress was real. Every step forward was careful and deliberate. Everything changed during the Second World War. In 1940, Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany. Suddenly, Iceland was cut off from its ruler. British forces arrived to prevent German control, followed later by American troops. The situation was risky, but it created an unexpected opportunity. For the first time in centuries, Denmark could no longer decide Iceland's future. In 1944, Iceland made its decision. There were no riots, no speeches filled with anger, and no violence. The people simply voted. More than 97% chose independence. While much of the world was at war, Iceland became a republic quietly and peacefully. An empire ended, not with force, but with a ballot. Independence was only the beginning. Iceland invested heavily in education and used its natural geothermal energy to build a sustainable economy. Strong institutions replaced old dependencies. When economic crises came, Iceland adapted. It was not always easy, and not always perfect, but the country remained stable and honest in its choices. Iceland's story teaches a rare lesson. Power does not always fall through violence. Identity can outlast empires, and patience can be stronger than force. Some revolutions shout and burn brightly. Others whisper and endure. Iceland chose the quiet path, and it worked.